During their childhood, Haruki told Hayato that she was moving away. Both of them were sad since it meant they wouldn't see each other anymore. However, they made a promise to always remain good friends. Tearfully, Haruki left, but Hayato remained hopeful. Now, Hayato stands in front of a class and introduces himself because he has just transferred. Haruki lets out a gasp. Earlier, Hayato's younger sister, Himeko, panicked because she thought she would be late. However, Hayato reminded her that they now live close to the school. It took Himeko a second to recall that they are new in town. She relaxed and decided to put a little more effort into how she looks because she's new to the school. Hayato told her to just be herself and be honest about coming from the countryside. However, Himeko believed that she needed to make a good first impression. When Hayato looks outside, his thoughts drift to Haruki, his childhood best friend whom he still believes is a guy. After introducing himself to the class, the teacher tells him to take the vacant seat next to a girl whose last name is Nikaido. As Hayato walks over, he can't help but think the girl has a similar name to his friend, and how Haruki would have probably used that to hit on her. When Hayato takes his seat, he greets Haruki, not knowing who she is yet. Since he does not recognize her, Haruki decides to greet him as if they have just met as well. He notices that Haruki looks a lot like the Haruki from his childhood. During the break, several classmates approach Hayato because they want to get to know him. Hayato explains why he transferred and how it's true that the countryside he comes from didn't have a large population. As he talks about his hometown, Haruki smiles to herself as she listens in. A classmate asks if he has a girlfriend, and he shares that he is single because it was hard to find girls his age to date. However, he shares that he had one friend who was a guy around the same age as him. He recalls how they did a lot of things that would have been considered dangerous, so he describes his friend as some sort of creature. Haruki snaps her pencil. The others notice and ask if she is alright. She comes up with an excuse to put them at ease. She then looks at Hayato and hides her irritation, but she mentions that it's an odd thing to say about a friend. Hayato laughs and mentions that he only says it like that because he considers the guy his closest friend. Haruki becomes embarrassed and faces the window. Hayato wants to ask her something, but his other classmates keep bombarding him with questions. When classes resume, Hayato notices that Haruki's mood is bad, so he decides to talk to her during lunch break. During lunch break, he tries to talk to her, but she has to entertain someone by the door. A classmate named Iori goes over and says he is surprised that Hayato was already making moves on Haruki. He explains to Hayato that Haruki is considered a prize girlfriend because she's really pretty and is said to be a sweetheart. She's also a good student in both academics and sports, so he's willing to bet that she was called away because she is made to help around the school. He warns Hayato about falling for her because Haruki has never entertained anyone. Hayato denies being interested. However, now he is even more curious about Haruki. Later, he manages to buy some bread. He decides that next time he should bring his own lunch, but for now, he just wants to find somewhere quiet and eat his lunch. He finds himself near the school's vegetable garden and sees a student named Minamo there. Since someone is already there, he decides to leave, but he hears Minamo muttering about how the vegetables are not bearing any fruit. He decides to approach her and recognizes the plant to be a zucchini. He looks at the other plants and is able to identify them even if none of them have fruits or vegetables. Hayato tells Minamo that in order for the zucchini to start fruiting, the female flowers need to be pollinated. He also gives Minamo more tips about how to take care of the other plants. Minamo is surprised by his knowledge of gardening. Hayato shares that he used to help out in the fields. He asks if this is the gardening club's plot, and Minamo confirms that it is. She wants to know if he thinks their tomatoes look strange. Hayato says they look fine and even tells Minamo that tomatoes were originally ornamental plants. Haruki suddenly appears behind them, and Minamo is the first to greet her. Haruki manages a sweet smile and tells Minamo that the fertilizer for the club has already arrived. Once she is gone, Haruki scolds Hayato because it looks like he was hitting on Minamo. Hayato denies it and says that he approached her because she reminded him of someone. She tries to ask whom, and Hayato hesitates before admitting that he was thinking of his Uncle Gen's sheep. Haruki guesses that it's the specific one he raised to eat the weeds, but the sheep ended up eating his vegetables instead. Hayato agrees and mentions that when he saw Minamo's puffy hair beside the vegetables, he was reminded of the sheep. While she slaps his back playfully, Hayato slowly realizes that she is Haruki, his childhood friend. Before he can ask any questions, she gets called away. She instantly becomes polite and follows the students so they can talk. Before she disappears, she signals Hayato to stay quiet. Hayato ends up confused for the rest of the day. He wonders if she really is Haruki. He tries to think back to his childhood, and as far as he remembers, Haruki was a boy. Haruki catches him staring at her, so she flicks a rolled-up piece of paper at him to tease him. At the end of the school day, some of their classmates invite Hayato to go to karaoke with them. However, Haruki says that Hayato cannot go with them. She calmly explains that Hayato had asked her to give him a tour of the campus. He can feel her emitting scary vibes, so he chooses not to say anything against it. One of his classmates comments on how jealous he is of Hayato. Haruki drags him out of the room and onto the streets, changing her grip to hold his hand instead. When Hayato catches a glimpse of her, he is suddenly reminded of their childhood and moves slightly ahead, teasing her that she's slow and that he can overtake her. They begin running toward wherever Haruki wants to bring him. Suddenly, Hayato's confusion over Haruki's gender is non-existent. What matters is that they are reunited again. Haruki ends up bringing him to her house. She casually lets him inside, and Hayato starts to feel a little cautious since they are the only ones at home, and Haruki seems to be acting like a tomboy. When they reach her room and sit down, Haruki finally asks him what he meant when he called her a creature. Hayato apologizes and says that he can just owe her a favor. This makes Haruki giggle as she mentions that Hayato already owes her several favors. Hayato relaxes and fires back that Haruki also owes him a ton of favors. Both of them feel comfortable around each other, so Hayato mentions that the act she puts up isn't fair. This makes Haruki smirk and agree, stating that she has become a master of camouflage. Hayato is about to call her a creature again, which causes her to scold him. They both laugh and Haruki suggests they play a game. She wants the loser to owe the winner a favor. However, Hayato finds it unfair, so they decide it should be the best out of 5. By sunset, Hayato has to leave and the two bid each other goodbye. But before he leaves, Haruki tells him something. Outside their apartment, Himeko waits for Hayato to return. Once she spots him, she tells him that their father had to visit their mother again. She complains that Hayato should get himself a cell phone because she does not want to be treated like an answering machine. Hayato apologizes and offers to make her anything she wants for dinner. Himeko requests his hamburger steaks. When he is about to head inside so he can start, Himeko suddenly holds him back and gives him a worried expression. Hayato reassures her that their mother will be okay, and that was the whole point of transferring here. During dinner, Himeko feels a lot better after taking a bite of Hayato's cooking. She hopes that Hayato will continue cooking for her in the future while she handles frozen meals and instant food. She then tells Hayato about some things she learned while at school, like how there are no coin-operated rice meal machines here, and that the nearest station is only a 10-minute walk. Both of them begin giggling because of how obvious it is that they come from the countryside. Himeko then wants to know how his day went because he seems to be in a happier mood than usual. He shares that he reunited with Haruki at school and that they even sit next to each other. Himeko grows excited and wants to know what Haruki looks like now. Instead of admitting that he found out Haruki is a girl, he leaves it out and says that Haruki is the same and is even pushier than usual. The next day, Hayato visits the garden again and spots Minamo in the same spot. He greets her and asks if she was able to pollinate the flowers since they are in full bloom. Minamo looks nervous and admits that she does not know how. Hayato offers to help and begins pollinating the flowers. Minamo is amazed because she assumed the flowers would just do things naturally and create vegetables for them to eat. Hayato gives her an odd look because of her description, and Minamo apologizes for how weird it must have sounded. She gets so embarrassed that she turns red. Haruki notices and teases them, asking what Hayato must have done to make Minamo blush like that. Minamo gets so embarrassed that she ends up running away. Haruki then switches her personality and mentions that Minamo really does resemble the sheep. Hayato gives her a tired look and asks how long she's been there. She admits she's been there since Minamo was awkwardly explaining things and knew Hayato was awkward, so she decided to save him. Hayato feels like Haruki could have approached them better. Haruki explains that she can't because she has a reputation to protect. When Hayato asks if that means throwing him under the bus, she happily admits that she will and that he can handle it since they are friends. When she skips away, Hayato smiles because of her playful side. When they are back in the classroom, Haruki is already swarmed by students needing her help. Hayato watches her and wonders why she needed to create this persona, but he decides to give her the space at school to make her cover convincing. After class, she asks Hayato to come with her. Some of their classmates seem to notice and become suspicious. Haruki struggles to come up with an excuse for needing Hayato, so Hayato mentions that she wanted his help with the school's garden. Haruki immediately plays along and asks if he can come with her to take care of things now. She leaves ahead of him, and Iori mentions how lucky Hayato is. Hayato follows her to a storage room, which Haruki mentions is her secret base. Once they settle down, Haruki admits that she wants to eat lunch with friends. Hayato is surprised and she tells him it's very important since she can't really eat with anyone without hurting someone. Hayato sighs and hands her his lunch, stating that her dream is about to come true. Haruki immediately becomes happier and promises to give him a favor for every 10 lunches. However, Hayato says that they should just have lunch together without any penalties. They decide to make a promise to do just that, making Haruki remember the promises they made years ago. When he holds out his pinky for Haruki to take and seal the deal, he remembers the same promise that had kept their friendship alive. They manage to meet again, and he now notices that growing apart has made their differences more apparent. Finishing the deal, they smile since they know those differences won't get in the way of their friendship. Yesterday, Haruki had said, "Welcome back," because she believes he is now back in her life. One day during lunch, the girls in class talk excitedly among themselves while Haruki does her schoolwork. Hayato notices that they are trying to get Haruki to join their conversation, though Haruki shares that she is not really into TV dramas. They begin talking about how some people in their school even get to check out the set and everything. Apparently, the people in question are rumored to be dating. They try to get Haruki's opinion again, and Hayato can clearly tell she is getting uncomfortable with the gossip. Packing up his lunch, he tells Haruki that he saw a girl who was just calling for her. However, she had taken off toward the storage room. He encourages her to go after the girl to see if she needs something. Haruki pretends to remember making plans with a girl and tells the other girls that she will need to excuse herself. She then runs out of the classroom with her lunch. After a while, Hayato follows her and spots her inviting him to sit next to her in the storage room. She thanks him for saving her back there. When he takes his seat, Haruki begins complaining about how their female classmates like to talk about dating gossip and TV dramas. Hayato reasons that it might be normal for girls because Himeko is the same way. This makes Haruki smile nervously because in her case, she would rather talk about which character suits what machine in a game or other game development drama and leaks. Hayato does not see the problem since he thinks a lot of people are interested in that. However, Haruki mentions that those people are usually all guys. She feels she has trouble approaching them now because of the reputation she built up in middle school. This makes Hayato laugh and Haruki feels as if he is making fun of her. She pouts at him, causing Hayato to joke again that being popular isn't all that great. Haruki agrees, saying it is a lot of work, and admits she is horrible at girl talk. Hayato cannot help himself and ruffles her hair. When Haruki gets annoyed, he apologizes, stating that he does that to Himeko a lot. Haruki complains that her hair is now a mess because of him. Hayato apologizes again, but then notices that Haruki really is beautiful. His thinking that Haruki is cute does not quite sit right with him, so he looks away. Haruki questions why he is acting weird all of a sudden. Instead of answering her question, he advises her to just use her camouflage as a prim and proper lady so she can dodge gossip without a hitch. Haruki suddenly asks what Hayato thinks about her fooling everyone with her fake personality. Hayato answers that he does not really think anything of it, except that it is still just her. Haruki feels satisfied enough to start eating, and Hayato notices that everything she brought was bought from a convenience store. Haruki takes a look at Hayato's lunch and sees that he brought some rice croquettes. Seeing that Haruki is eyeing his lunch, he offers her one in exchange for half of one of her onigiri. They make the deal and Haruki takes a bite of one of the croquettes, instantly delighted since it also has creamy cheese inside. She is shocked when Hayato shares that he was the one who made it. She looks at the food again and realizes that Hayato has grown up over the last 7 years. Hayato is about to ask a question, but then they notice 2 students passing by the window. They quickly hide beneath it so they will not be seen. They peek out once the voices are a bit farther away and notice that the girl is confessing to an upperclassman. When things get a little heated, they duck back down and the couple heads back to where they came from. Both Haruki and Hayato feel awkward about what they just witnessed, but this only makes Haruki realize how much she really sucks at girl talk. Hayato admits he does not do well either, which causes them both to laugh. After class, Haruki runs into Hayato at the grocery store. She shares that she is shopping for dinner and notices that Hayato is looking at a candy toy. Hayato denies wanting to buy one and claims that he is doing groceries as well. He tries to move away, but Haruki suddenly shares that she has a diorama from that series. That makes Hayato look back at her curiously, so she proudly shows him her diorama. Hayato notices it is a replica of their aunt's old candy shop. Haruki admits it took her a long time to complete because she kept getting benches. According to her, this made her appreciate the concept of probability. Instead of continuing the conversation, Hayato suggests they start looking for their groceries. However, now Haruki wants to buy candy toys. In the end, they manage to finish doing their groceries properly, and Hayato even gets them great discounts on their purchases. On the walk home, he notices Haruki is carrying a lot and offers to carry some of the items for her. He notices that the bag is really heavy and peers inside, only to find a lot of frozen meals. He asks if she buys a lot of that type of food. She says she does and even stocks up on it. As they continue their walk, she sneaks a glance at Hayato, remembering how kind he has been to her since arriving. She mutters something that Hayato does not seem to catch. Though he looks at her curiously, she refuses to share what it was. When they arrive at her house, Hayato asks where he should put her groceries. She points to a corner of the house and Hayato leaves them there before preparing to head out. Before he leaves, Haruki suggests they exchange contact information, but Hayato refuses. Haruki thinks he is rejecting her offer, but Hayato admits that he actually does not have a phone. The fact that he did not start with that explanation angers Haruki. Later, Himeko learns that it will be raining tomorrow and already dreads what it will do to her hair. Hayato says he actually likes the rain because he will not be asked to water the fields. Himeko has to remind him that they live in the city now. Himeko checks her phone and learns that the rain will clear up by noon. Hayato notices her using the smartphone and wonders if it is really such a useful item. He tells Himeko that Haruki even got mad at him for not owning one. Himeko agrees with Haruki, saying that owning a smartphone is as essential as having a fridge or a tractor, and Hayato is surprised that it is that important in daily life. Back in the countryside, it was not very useful to them since they could hardly get a signal, but now Himeko finds it hard to live without one because she can chat with her friends every day. Hayato is shocked that Himeko is still keeping in touch with her old friends. He remembers a particular girl Himeko was close with and recalls that she was never fond of him. Himeko recalls her as well, saying that her friend always acted weird around him. She reasons that maybe Hayato was just ugly. He feels insulted, so Himeko promises to only say nice things about him. She then mentions how happy Haruki must be now that they are reunited. She wants to believe that Haruki and Hayato are still very close and want to catch up a lot, since it has been years. Hayato agrees and realizes that there are a lot of things about Haruki that he does not know. For starters, he did not know Haruki was a girl this whole time, nor did he know the reason why she was so mad at him earlier. He feels that misunderstandings are inevitable and wonders if getting a phone will help him understand her more. One day, it is raining at school, but Minamo smiles as she tends to the vegetable garden. Hayato approaches her and she excitedly shares that all the fruits and vegetables are doing well. He asks if he can borrow the pruning tool and she gives him a plastic bag so they can harvest the crops. Minamo gazes dreamily at their harvest, then offers to give half of it to Hayato, saying it is the least she can do since he helped her a lot. When she is done separating the produce, she asks if they can exchange contact information, since she does not know whom she can contact for advice when it comes to the garden and wants to continue seeking his help. Hayato starts off by apologizing, and Minamo immediately thinks that he does not want to give her his number. Seeing her look sad, Hayato explains that since he came from a place with no signal, he never bothered getting a cell phone. Minamo giggles at his explanation, and Hayato blushes a bit from embarrassment. They finally introduce themselves to each other, and Hayato promises that once he has a smartphone, he will be sure to let her know. Later in class, Iori makes fun of him because he clearly got caught in the rain. Iori then notices he is carrying a bag of vegetables, which he thinks is a weird gift to receive. However, Hayato finds it weird that Iori has never received vegetables as a gift. Haruki then pretends to be concerned over his state and tries to insist on helping him by offering her handkerchief. This causes the entire class to look at them, because Haruki is usually distant with people. When Hayato looks over at Haruki, he sees her smirk and he knows for sure that Haruki is doing this on purpose. So he decides to accept the handkerchief she offers and promises to return it to her later. Haruki suggests that they exchange numbers so he can tell her when she can expect it back. Hayato panics and admits out loud that he does not have a cell phone, causing Haruki to act as if Hayato had made the whole thing up to avoid giving her his contact information. The class begins judging him, believing that he must somehow dislike Haruki, while feeling sorry for Haruki because her kindness is being rejected. He tries to explain to the class that he really is being honest and does not own a cell phone. Some of the guys go over to him, insisting they have a chat. Knowing that he is going to receive a lecture, he looks back only to see Haruki teasing him. Later, Haruki and Hayato end up playing video games at Haruki's house. They discuss how Haruki had to go to such lengths to prove a point, and they have such a hard time focusing on the game that they end up losing. However, neither of them is too upset about the loss. Haruki asks why Hayato has vegetables, and Hayato admits that they came from Minamo as a thank you gift. He offers some of the vegetables to Haruki, but she refuses, reasoning that she does not want to eat too much. Still, Hayato finds her suspicious. Haruki proceeds to ask the real reason Hayato does not have a phone, thinking there might be some rule in his house. Hayato denies it and says that Himeko uses her phone all the time. He then mentions that Haruki should come over since Himeko would love to see her. Haruki readily agrees, but then repeats her original question. He decides to be honest and says there is really no special reason. Haruki finds it unbelievable, thinking people in their hometown have already started using smartphones. Hayato admits that they do because they can manage their fields using apps, and that people even upload videos of themselves plowing their fields. He then tells Haruki not to laugh at him. He shares that he actually does not even know what smartphone to get because there are so many choices. However, Haruki bursts into laughter. Hayato is upset with her for breaking her promise, so she tells him that she will help him pick out phone as an apology for laughing. Later, during dinner, Himeko tells Hayato that she wants ice cream. Hayato tells her that they still have some in the fridge, so Himeko has to clarify that she wants to go buy some ice cream. Seeing that Hayato is still confused, she becomes more straightforward and admits she wants to try visiting an urban convenience store at night and buying something from it. Hayato becomes intrigued and decides to join her. Eventually, they arrive at the convenience store and they are shocked that it really exists. Hayato then notices that Himeko is dressed up really nicely, and Himeko reasons that she needs to dress like she belongs in the city. They then notice Haruki walking near the entrance, and Hayato calls out to her. Haruki does not recognize Himeko, so she goes up to them, politely greets Hayato, and asks if Himeko is his girlfriend. After greeting Hayato, she menacingly approaches him with a fake smile on her face. Not recognizing Himeko, she asks if Himeko is his girlfriend. Hayato realizes that Haruki is misunderstanding things, but Haruki is already commenting on how fast he was to get a girlfriend right after moving into town. Hayato raises his arm to get her attention. Looking at both girls, he explains to Haruki that the girl is Himeko, and he finally tells Himeko that Haruki is a girl. Both girls look at each other in disbelief. The next day, Haruki has noticeable dark bags under her eyes, and the girls in class are worried about her. Hayato studies her from his seat. Last night, after learning the truth, Himeko had excitedly talked to Haruki, calling her really pretty. She admitted that she had been fooled the entire time because she honestly thought Haruki was a boy. She'd also assumed nothing had changed because whenever Hayato talked about her, he described Haruki as a gorilla. The information irritated Haruki, and she mentioned that he now owed her. This made Himeko realize that Haruki really hadn't changed much, and she suggested that they exchange contact information. Both of them began joking about how outdated Hayato is for not owning one. After that, Haruki and Himeko chatted endlessly through the night on their phones. Haruki's phone chimes and she smiles when she sees the message. The guys in class notice and wonder if this means that Haruki has a boyfriend. Haruki and Hayato panic because of the misunderstanding. When Haruki is at a loss, Hayato decides to do something about it. He goes up to her to chat and asks if she's smiling to herself because she has a boyfriend. She panics and denies it, but when she notices that Hayato is signaling her, she realizes what she needs to do. She mentions that she actually met up with a childhood friend and shows a picture of herself and Himeko together. The girls immediately get curious and look at the photo, and all of them are surprised by how comfortable Haruki looks around Himeko. The teacher comes in and tells them that class will begin now. As the students move to their seats, Haruki quietly thanks Hayato. During lunch, Haruki thanks him again for saving her, though a bit roughly. Hayato then notices something odd sticking out of her bag. Haruki tells him they are pillows she bought, and she even hands him one. Hayato is about to pay for it, but Haruki declines the money, saying she'd rather that he owe her instead. Then she suddenly gets nervous and decides to ask Hayato for something. Noticing that she looks shy, Hayato thinks this is some sort of confession, but the moment is broken when her stomach grumbles. Haruki loudly admits that she wasn't able to eat breakfast and had no time to buy lunch. Hayato feels a little disappointed but still opens his lunchbox and sets it between them so they can share. Haruki tells him she has extra chopsticks from convenience stores. This makes him realize that Haruki isn't eating well. Haruki happily digs into his food. She learns that Hayato made the lunch himself and even prepares lunch for Himeko. Haruki admits she's a little envious of Himeko for having an older brother like Hayato. Hayato then tells her that Himeko was nearly late for school, so he wants to know what the two of them were even chatting about. Haruki tells him about girly things. Unlike her, Himeko knows all the trendy things girls are into, so she was asking her about them. She tells him to come over to her house later since Himeko is also coming over. Hayato admits he is surprised that she isn't good at being a girl when no one but him can really tell. She tells him the act is easy enough to keep up, but the finer details are harder. She's about to tell him something but then decides to drop it. Hayato looks at their shared lunch and it oddly reminds him of how they used to share snacks. He studies Haruki and realizes there might be something troubling her. Instead of asking about it, he decides to pat her head. Haruki is surprised but understands the gesture. She then comments that between the two of them, he changed the most. She tells him that he's become arrogant, and they both laugh at the description. After school, Hayato notices that some students are staring outside the entrance. When he looks over, he sees Himeko looking nervous. Haruki also notices her, and the moment Himeko sees Haruki, she immediately grabs her and bolts out of the school. This causes people to gossip about Himeko and Haruki since it's rare for Haruki to hang out after school. When he arrives in front of Haruki's house, he realizes that it's too hot, so he rings the doorbell. He hears commotion coming from inside and is surprised when Haruki bursts out the door. Himeko quickly tells him to grab her, and he does so even though he's confused. Himeko then smirks from the doorway and tells Hayato to escort Haruki back inside the house. Inside, they study Haruki's clothes, and Himeko comments that they aren't really suited for her. Hayato notices that they resemble the clothes she used to wear when they were younger. Himeko decides that the stylish outfit she wore last night was probably a rare anomaly. Himeko tells her that her wardrobe is disastrous, and that although they'd be embarrassed to be seen with her in public wearing those clothes, they'll still love her because she's their precious childhood friend. So she asks Hayato if she can have Haruki on Saturday, so he decides to move his day with Haruki to Sunday. Himeko announces that they will be looking for new clothes for Haruki. Later, Himeko mentions feeling thirsty. Haruki realizes she hadn't prepared them any drinks and leaves to make some. Once she is out of the room, Himeko reminds Hayato that Haruki is a girl and that he should have offered to help her. He decides to go downstairs and help Haruki, but when he enters the kitchen, he is shocked to see it filled with takeout containers. Haruki realizes how embarrassing it is and tries to explain herself, but Hayato is already marching toward her. He grabs her hand and suddenly announces that they are leaving. When they get out of the kitchen, Himeko spots them from the stairs. Hayato tells her that they are heading to the supermarket and then going home. Himeko doesn't question him and goes upstairs to get her stuff. After the supermarket, they end up cooking at Hayato's apartment. Hayato begins chopping the vegetables and asks Himeko to grate the garlic and ginger. Himeko asks Haruki to grab the bowls and spices so she can help too. As she begins searching for the bowls, she notices how comfortable Hayato is in the kitchen. They begin preparing dinner while having a good time talking, and before long, gyoza and other side dishes are set on the table. Himeko tries a bite but accidentally burns her tongue. Hayato notices that Haruki is only staring and encourages her to eat. Haruki takes a bite and is amazed by the burst of flavor. Hayato scolds Himeko for only eating gyoza, and Himeko complains that she's simply competing with Haruki. Haruki looks at Himeko with a challenging glare before both girls burst into laughter. Tears well up in Haruki's eyes since she is a little overwhelmed. Hayato decides to invite her to have dinner with them from now on, mentioning that it's usually just him and Himeko, and they would love to have a friend to share a meal with. Haruki feels touched by the gesture and agrees to start joining them. She tells Hayato that she really owes him for this, but Hayato says that he's doing it because it's her and she doesn't owe him anything. They decide to make a pinky promise, and Himeko observes the two of them. She realizes that they will always be each other's best friends. On Saturday, Haruki brings Himeko to town for their shopping trip, with Himeko amazed by the area. Himeko notices that Haruki is energetic today despite her dislike for girly things. Haruki tells her that she decided to try being girly, and it's an added bonus as she gets to surprise Hayato while doing it. Himeko studies her and notices that she looks really cute today. Half of the things Haruki is wearing are actually from her, and they make her look a lot better. She thinks back to how Haruki used to look and realizes she would have never thought Haruki was a girl. She slaps herself to focus, which Haruki mistakes as Himeko pumping herself up. The two girls then cheer for the shopping day ahead. Meanwhile, Hayato takes the opportunity to visit his mother, Mayumi, who is recovering in the hospital. She offers Hayato some apple slices, and he notices there are a lot. She mentions that she'll just give the leftovers to her husband later. Hayato eats and asks if she's recovering well. Mayumi mentions that the surgery was successful, and that she'll be transferring to the rehabilitation ward. She wants to know how Himeko is doing, and Hayato reassures her that she's been doing okay. He tells her that Himeko is actually out with a friend today. He decides it's time for him to leave, and his mother waves goodbye to him. As he walks through the halls, he remembers the day his mother collapsed. Suddenly, he sees Minamo in front of him. He notices that she's carrying vegetable flowers and mentions how cute they look together. Minamo gets embarrassed, and she explains that she pruned the flowers and wanted to make good use of them. He compliments her on the great idea, which makes her practically vibrate with embarrassment. Hayato can't help but think that she really does resemble a sheep. Suddenly, Nadehisa, Minamo's grandfather, hurls a bottle at Hayato, which Hayato catches. Hayato is shocked to learn they are related, and Nadehisa begins accusing Hayato of making Minamo cry. He begins swinging his cane at Hayato, and Minamo desperately tries to stop him. After a while, Nadehisa eventually apologizes to Hayato after learning that he has been teaching Minamo about gardening. However, he begins to get suspicious and asks why Hayato approached Minamo in the first place. He thinks it's a hit on her, so he begins pointing his cane at Hayato again. Hayato decides to tell him that Minamo reminds him of a kid from his hometown, not mentioning that it's actually a sheep. Minamo finally snaps and grabs Hayato's hand, stunning Nadehisa in the process. She sets the flowers down, announces that she's leaving with Hayato, and begins dragging him toward the door. When she closes the door, the other elderly patients begin teasing Nadehisa. In the hall, Hayato has to remind Minamo that she is still holding his hand. She lets go and apologizes, but Hayato knows that Nadehisa is just really fond of her. When Minamo looks sad, he suddenly remembers how Himeko looked when Mayumi collapsed. When Minamo smiles at him, he suddenly apologizes. Minamo insists that she's the one who should be sorry because of Nadehisa. Hayato studies her for a moment, still reminded of how Himeko was during that time. Eventually, they bid each other goodbye, but Hayato suddenly asks if he's free to visit the garden again. Minamo gives him a smile and says that he's welcome anytime, making him feel relieved. Later, Himeko comes home to Hayato preparing dinner. She tells him that Haruki was too tired to come over for food. Hayato is surprised because Haruki usually doesn't get tired. Himeko then looks into the pot and notices that Hayato is cooking curry. While waiting for the curry, she decides to rest in her room and think about the conversation she had with Haruki. They decided that Haruki should wear something very girly to surprise Hayato. Thinking about it, she is happy that Haruki is willing to go the extra mile for him. Back in their hometown, Saki, a friend of theirs, receives some vegetables from Gen. She then receives a message from Himeko, which also includes a photo of how Haruki looks now. She immediately calls Himeko and asks why she's lying to her because that cannot possibly be the same Haruki. However, Himeko says it really is Haruki and that she's surprisingly the same as before. Himeko has to hang up because dinner is ready, leaving Saki confused. On the day Hayato and Haruki are supposed to buy Hayato's phone, Hayato feels overwhelmed by the size of the shopping district. Suddenly, he is pulled away by Haruki, who is trying to escape some guys. Hayato manages to get Haruki to stop dragging him, and he finally notices that she's wearing a nice outfit and even makeup today. Haruki tells him she decided to give it a shot and wants to know his opinion about it. When Hayato nervously mentions that she looks pretty the way she is today, she suddenly becomes nervous and self-conscious. She panics because she did not expect him to react so honestly, so to hide her nervousness, she pulls him along so they can look for his phone. After some time, Hayato finally purchases a smartphone. He ends up getting one that's the same model as Haruki's phone. Haruki thinks it's some sort of couple thing, but Hayato reasons that it's easier this way. So if he doesn't understand something, he can just ask her about it. Hayato then notices that Haruki is wearing sandals and apologizes for walking too fast. Haruki says that her shoes aren't the problem, but the skirt is making her self-conscious. She tells him that it's too short and the material feels too flimsy. She's worried that one wrong movement or gust of wind might reveal what's underneath. She complains about Hayato's lack of empathy and says that he should wear a skirt next time and suffer with her. Hayato tells her that he'd look horrible in a skirt. However, Haruki begs to differ because he is Himeko's brother, so they must look similar in one. She then realizes something and gets an evil glint in her eye that Hayato recognizes as something he has to worry about. Eventually, she backs off, but a teasing smile remains. When Hayato looks in front of him, he is amazed by the sight of the city. Hayato wants to look around but feels overwhelmed by the number of shops. Haruki tells him that he should test using his phone, so Hayato pulls out his phone and Haruki guides him on how to search for a store. Once they get the directions, they head over there and Haruki is surprised that such a big 100 yen store exists. Hayato gets excited and enters. Both of them check out all the different items. There are so many things that Hayato wants, but he gets overwhelmed and ends up not buying anything. Haruki remembers how Hayato is always indecisive, mentioning how he used to struggle with choosing candy. Both of them recite how the best choice is always ramen and ice cream. They both smile since that was always their go-to, but the memory also makes Haruki feel sad. Hayato is about to ask if something's wrong, but then Haruki's stomach grumbles loudly. Seeing that it's already past lunchtime, Hayato suggests they go somewhere to eat. Haruki tells him she knows where to bring him. She takes him to a karaoke bar where she immediately lounges around because she is tired of acting like a proper lady in public. Haruki teases him for being interested in her, but Hayato says that today only proves that he sees her the same way he sees Himeko. She tries to call his bluff and even smugly mentions how popular she is with the guys. She leans closer to taunt him more, but then a waitress enters with their order. After setting the food down, the waitress reminds them that they aren't an intimate establishment, so they should tone it down. When she leaves, Haruki panics because she thinks she might have looked trashy in front of someone. Hayato admits that she really did look cheap. Watching her scarf down their food, Hayato worries there might not be any left for him and begins eating as well. They end up finishing everything, and the mood lightens considerably now that they are full. When they leave, Hayato comments on the irony that his first trip to a karaoke bar ended without either of them singing anything. However, both of them look forward to going to a karaoke bar again someday. Haruki then asks if Hayato is really a boy. Hayato says that he is, but is curious why Haruki is asking. She admits that she's been pondering their relationship since when they were kids. It really didn't matter what their genders were. Hayato isn't sure what to call their friendship, but says that they are still themselves. They both smile at the notion. Haruki then notices a crowd ahead and runs over because she wants to see what the commotion is about. However, when she gets there, she freezes because she recognizes Mao, who is an actress from a popular drama. Hayato notices that Mao is the woman he saw in the advertisement earlier. He notices Haruki take a step back before running off in a different direction. He tries to catch up to her, but she trips. Luckily, he was able to grab her arm in time to prevent her from falling. He notices that something is bothering her, so to help her relax, he suggests they walk along the train tracks to go home. As they walk, their hands are still together, and Haruki notices how big and warm his hands have gotten. She muses that there was a time when she was even taller than him, though Hayato denies that it was ever true. Haruki can't help but remember a particularly lonely day while she was waiting at a bus stop. Hayato had walked over to her and invited her to play. Since then, her outlook has gradually brightened. She can't help but be reminded of their first encounter. She tells Hayato that she has something to confess. When Hayato gives her his attention, she admits that she lives alone in her house. They then notice a family walking nearby. The sight causes Haruki to tear up and confess that she's doing her best to be patient. Seeing that she didn't give him context, she tells Hayato not to worry about what she just said. By sunset, they arrive at the station. Haruki wants to come over but worries that it's too early for dinner and that she might be bothering Himeko. However, Hayato suggests that she can always help Himeko with her homework, which she happily agrees to do. However, at Hayato's apartment, Haruki ends up playing games and Hayato has to remind her to help with schoolwork. As she continues to play, Himeko can't help but think Haruki looks attractive, and Hayato scolds her for staring. Himeko asks about his thoughts on Haruki's outfit. Hayato admits that he thinks it looks cute on her. Haruki suddenly announces that she just beat the high score, which makes Himeko panic and tell her that she'll take the top spot back. Hayato smiles as he watches them play. Later, dinner is served and the girls scarf down their meal. Afterward, Haruki finally helps Himeko with her homework. After a while, they notice it's getting late, so Haruki needs to head home. When they open the door, they see a heavy downpour, so Haruki asks if she can borrow an umbrella. With an umbrella in hand, she heads to the bottom of the apartment with Hayato. But instead of using the umbrella, she hands it back to Hayato and begins running home. Hayato stops her and tells her to stay the night. The suggestion shocks Haruki, and she calls him bold for making that offer. He tries to explain that this is the better option because she'll catch a cold if she runs all the way home. Haruki begins teasing him, so he decides to humor her, agrees to all her jabs, and begins dragging her back to the apartment. However, she begins panicking and mentions that Himeko is there. Hayato says that Himeko will be thrilled to have her over. However, he notices that something is off with Haruki and tries to bring it up. Instead, he says that he does not want to send her home. Haruki agrees to stay over and they find themselves back at the apartment. Later, when Hayato finishes his bath, he notices Haruki is on his bed and wearing one of his shirts. He wonders why she didn't borrow one of Himeko's. Haruki admits that she did, but it was too tight, so Himeko just threw one of his shirts at her instead. Hayato laughs and tells Haruki that Himeko is actually very self-conscious about her size. Haruki tells him that she was surprised by how angry Himeko looked earlier. When she tries to ask him for advice, he doesn't stop laughing, so she begins hitting his back out of annoyance. She stops and mentions how Himeko has really become a proper girl now and is overtaking her. She then runs a hand across his back and mentions how big he has gotten too and how he's become a great cook. She tells him that they really have changed. He can tell something is bothering Haruki, so he tells her that he really enjoyed today. He mentions that when she left their hometown, he really felt lonely since he had no other friends his age. Ever since they met up again, he feels like he's beginning to have fun again, just like when they were little. So in his case, he's really thankful that they found each other again. He tells her that he doesn't really know what happened to her during the time they were apart, and he is aware that he is limited in what he can do. However, he wants her to know that he is here for her and can come running anytime. He reminds her that now that he has a phone, she can contact him, so he'll know she needs him by her side. When he turns around, he is surprised to see Haruki crying. Even Haruki is surprised by her own tears. Hayato turns around again and tells her that she can lean on him. She decides to lean against his back and begins crying. Hayato clenches his fist, wishing he could do more since Haruki is clearly distressed. After a while, he notices that Haruki has drifted to sleep against his back. He carefully lays her down on his bed and apologizes. He hears Haruki call out for her mother. He wipes the tears from her eyes and hopes that someday she'll be ready to open up to him again. He leaves the room and tells her goodnight, comforted by the fact that both of them are still keeping their promise to each other alive. When he shuts the door, Himeko gives him a concerned look and he returns it with a smile, which comforts her. In Haruki's dream, she recalls how Hayato had told her they would always be each other's best friend. The next morning, Haruki wakes up a little confused, but then remembers she spent the night at Hayato's. She smiles fondly at her pinky finger since she and Hayato have kept their promise. She heads to the living room and spots Hayato sleeping on the couch. Her thoughts are suddenly consumed by him and she finds herself blushing. She decides she needs to get some payback. She briefly considers kissing him, but stops herself. She begins thinking of other pranks and settles on one. Before she does anything, she tries to wake him up, warning him that if he doesn't, he'll regret it. At school later, Hayato arrives and Iori notices something red on Hayato's neck. When Hayato takes a look, he thinks it might be some sort of bug bite. Iori shares that Haruki has been showing off some photos from her weekend shopping trip with her childhood friend. When Hayato lacks enthusiasm, Iori tells him that he needs to be more excited because it means Haruki wore something casual. When Hayato sits down, Haruki offers to show him a photo of her dearest childhood friend. Initially, he refuses, but then sees that the photo on her screen is of the two of them while he was sleeping, and it appears the red mark was Haruki's doing. When they return to the apartment, Haruki and Himeko notice a dark aura as Hayato chops vegetables. Haruki admits that she had gone too far. First, Hayato gives her a disapproving look before smiling and welcoming her home. Haruki shudders before smiling and accepting the greeting. In the past, there was an occasion where Hayato and Haruki were trying to catch Gen's lamb who had run away from his field. However, it slipped past them and headed straight toward Himeko. Luckily, Haruki managed to catch the lamb. Himeko ran off to get Gen, and Hayato mentioned how relieved he was that a little girl like Himeko was unharmed. Haruki felt insulted since it implied Hayato hadn't cared about her, but Hayato said that he didn't need to worry about Haruki since he had known Haruki was a girl yet. He called Haruki his partner that day, which she happily accepted. He wakes up realizing he had dreamed of an old memory. At school, he helps Minamo out in the school garden, giving her tips on how to use the fertilizers and explaining how important it is to the crop's overall health. When they finish, Hayato notices that her clothes are see-through because of her sweat and averts his eyes in embarrassment. Haruki covers Minamo up, explaining that she needs to start considering what she wears during her club activities. It takes a moment for Minamo to realize what she means, and the moment she does, she grabs the towel and scurries away. Hayato tries to explain himself to Haruki, but she just continues to glare at him with judgmental eyes. He realizes nothing he says will help, and Haruki storms off. Hayato already knows the school day ahead will be hard. Back in class, he can clearly see that she is still upset with him. Later, their teacher tells them to use their printouts, and Hayato is confused about what printouts he's referring to, as it might have been given when he didn't start studying here. He tries to ask Haruki about it, and she allows him to borrow her printouts on the condition that he doesn't look at them in the hungry way he was looking at Minamo earlier. This catches all the boys' attention, and they wonder what kind of girl Hayato was ogling. They begin sharing their own preferences when it comes to women, ignoring Hayato as he tries to clear up the misunderstanding. Deciding to add more fuel to the chaos, Haruki then decides to tell the boys that Hayato is really into the upper body. The boys cheer at such a relatable preference, while the girls react in horror that Hayato and the boys are openly talking about it in front of them. Iori tells Hayato to look at Haruki, and Hayato notices the teasing grin she is giving him. Later, at their apartment, Haruki tells Himeko about what happened at school. They begin talking about how much bigger Minamo is, which causes the girls to tease Hayato. Hayato would prefer it if they just stopped gossiping. Later, while Hayato is cleaning up, the girls are playing a game. They continue their gossip about Hayato, causing Haruki to begin complaining that Hayato should just settle for her. She freezes when she realizes what she just said, giving Himeko the opportunity to win. Only then does Himeko notice that Haruki is distracted. Haruki suddenly mentions that she needs to go home and takes off without another explanation. Hayato is shocked since she doesn't let either of them see her off, which causes Himeko to tease him about how Haruki must think he's a creep now. Later, as Himeko gets ready for her bath, she wonders if Haruki is beginning to develop genuine feelings for Hayato because she's noticed Haruki acting strangely around him lately, though she quickly dismisses the possibility. She checks her weight and looks at the scale in disbelief. Meanwhile, Haruki arrives home and immediately heads to the shower. No matter what she does, she is plagued by thoughts of Hayato and Minamo together. She then remembers what she said earlier and wonders if she's worried about Hayato actually getting a girlfriend. Later, she decides to forget about her worries with some ice cream. She suddenly receives a call from Himeko, who immediately asks if she's okay. Himeko reveals that she just weighed herself and has gained 4 whole kilos, so she wants to know if Haruki is also having the same weight gain issues. Haruki says that she's sure she's fine, though she's actually nervous about gaining weight. Himeko insists that Haruki should weigh herself to be sure. Haruki decides to humor her, but screams in horror when she realizes she has gained 4 whole kilos too. The next day, Hayato spends the morning in the garden and shares that his sister is going on a diet. He was hoping that Minamo knows about dieting. However, because of the way he says it, Minamo thinks he means that she needs to go on a diet. He quickly clears it up by saying that Himeko asked him to help her out, and that he was hoping to get some opinions from another girl. They take a break from gardening, and Hayato shares that he usually handles all the cooking in the house, so he wonders if there's something he can prepare that's diet-friendly. Minamo realizes he had to take over the cooking because of his hospitalized mother, and her thoughts drift to Nagahisa. They then begin talking about meal preparation and how Minamo usually cooks things Nagahisa likes, so it's possible that the food she makes is diet-friendly. Suddenly, they hear people nearby and hide in the building. They peek out and see a girl in Kazuki, a popular member of the soccer club whom many girls have a crush on. Minamo tells Hayato that Kazuki will probably reject the girl, and sure enough, they see the girl run off in obvious disappointment. Minamo shares that she knew Kazuki would reject everyone because a lot of people know that Kazuki only has eyes for Haruki, which is why he never accepts any confession. Later, Hayato keeps thinking about how Kazuki is interested in Haruki. When he enters the classroom, he notices the girls all chatting animatedly around Haruki. He tries to listen in on their conversation and learns that they are talking about different dieting methods. This makes him wonder if it's some sort of fad since all the girls seem to be doing it. Iori says that plenty of girls are getting ready to switch to their summer clothes, but warns Hayato that a girl on a diet is often moody. According to him, they resemble hungry grizzly bears just like his own girlfriend when she's on one. Hayato decides to ask how long Iori has been with his girlfriend. Iori admits that they only started dating toward the end of middle school, but they've been close ever since because they were childhood friends. Iori then remembers something and tells Hayato that if a girl is hungry, he should focus on complimenting and praising her instead of feeding her if she's on a diet. Hayato sighs and decides to keep an eye on Haruki. During lunch, Haruki looks sadly at her meal compared to Hayato's packed lunch. Hayato tries to offer her a few bites of his food, but Haruki gets mad and tells him that she can't because she gained 4 kilograms, and it's a huge deal for her, even if it looks like she didn't put on any weight from his perspective. She tries to make him understand through analogies about the human body, though most of them don't make much sense to him. Finally, starting her lunch, she still looks sad and decides to ask if Hayato is mad at her. She noticed today that he looks serious and was worried that his expression was because she teased him too much yesterday. Hayato wonders why she is suddenly so remorseful, then remembers Iori mentioning that girls on a diet can be emotionally unstable. He then remembers Kazuki and how he is only interested in Haruki. He decides to start patting Haruki's head, mentioning that she has really pretty hair and that it needs proper nutrients to stay looking like that. He reminds her not to push herself too hard with her diet and tells her that he is there for anything she needs. This seems to work, and since she notices how much Hayato likes her hair, she promises to take good care of it. However, she begins to panic when she realizes that she actually enjoyed having him pat her head. She scolds him for doing that and even accuses him of doing it with other girls. Hayato is confused and explains that the only ones he's ever patted on the head were Himeko and the different animals he found cute. However, she continues to fret over everything, and Hayato decides to give up and simply enjoy her overblown reaction to such a simple gesture. Once things calm down, Haruki shares that she's not really used to receiving praise or having her hair ruffled the way Hayato did, which surprises Hayato because she is popular. She admits that despite her popularity, she has actually never received a confession. She explains that she did such a good job of keeping people at a distance that no one ever really made an attempt to confess to her. She came up with the excuse that her good girl persona wasn't allowed to date anyone because it would cause an uproar and destroy the balance she had built. Hayato begins to feel like he understands her way of thinking a little better and hopes this is the start of learning more about how Haruki was once she moved to the city. Haruki then mentions that she would still like to go on a diet, but more for her health than anything else. At home, Hayato wonders what he can make for dinner next time because he only managed to make dishes that looked like sides served at an izakaya bar. He wonders if there's another girl he could ask for help and remembers Saki, so he tries asking Himeko for Saki's number. However, Himeko gets the wrong idea and thinks Hayato wants to make a move on Saki. Hayato tries to explain himself, but Himeko still doesn't want to give him Saki's number because Saki doesn't really like him, and it might look like she's betraying their friendship. So she offers to give Saki his number instead and explain the situation. Later, while Saki is busy with her schoolwork, she receives a message from Himeko. Attached to the message is Hayato's phone number. Shocked that he needs her, she decides to add him and messages him to ask if he needs something from her. Hayato notices the message and is surprised that she actually responded. He decides to message her about his concerns, explaining how he doesn't have many females to ask. He is shocked when Saki replies almost immediately. Saki admits that she's never been on a diet, then curtly replies that he can always search the internet using important keywords. Her cold response makes him think that she really does hate him, so he thanks her and promises to message her again if he has more questions. Meanwhile, Saki is panicking because she realizes she might have come across as too cold. She starts searching her room for a conversation topic, not wanting to miss this chance to chat with him. The next morning, Hayato wakes up and sees that his phone is filled with messages from Saki about different healthy recipes. He then notices that Saki even sent him a photo of herself in her costume for the upcoming festival in their town. Hayato is confused about why she sent it, but convinces himself that it's probably for Himeko. So he replies that he'll show the photo to Himeko, then decides to compliment Saki on how cute she looks and how beautiful all of her costumes are. When Saki receives the message, she becomes embarrassed and overwhelmed. Later at school, Hayato pulls out his phone and Iori catches a glimpse of Saki's photo. Iori gets the idea that Hayato is really into festivals and shrine maidens. He then mentions that he himself loves seeing girls in yukatas. This summons a crowd of male classmates to Hayato's desk, and they begin talking about how nice it is to see girls wearing yukatas. Haruki approaches them and teasingly asks if guys are really into girls in yukatas. To her surprise, all the boys answer that they are in unison. They then begin asking to see Haruki in a yukata and whether she can attend the upcoming festival with them. This puts Haruki in an awkward situation because she tries to politely decline the boys' requests. Iori and Hayato observe the exchange and Iori comments that Haruki seems to have changed. He mentions that compared to before, Haruki seems more approachable, making him believe the rumors that she has a secret boyfriend now. Suddenly, the classroom door opens, revealing Kazuki, and he asks if Haruki is available to talk to him. Seeing that Kazuki is looking for her, Haruki decides to see what he needs. Hayato observes him, remembering what Minamo had said about Kazuki. He sees Haruki agree to go with him, and suddenly finds himself insisting on coming along. To cover up his concern, he makes an excuse about wanting to see what their club is like because he's been thinking of joining one. Seeing nothing wrong with it, both of them agree to let him join. Kazuki tries to be friendly with him and learns that Hayato is actually the rumored transfer student, which is why he has no club yet. He tries to ask Hayato what club he is interested in. Hayato shares that he is looking into the gardening club but is also interested in why Kazuki thinks the soccer club is fun. Kazuki considers the question and says he likes being part of a team that shares a common goal and achieves things together. He also mentions that there are too many things to like about the sport for him to list them all in one conversation. Hayato mentions that it isn't too different from farming or gardening. He explains how everyone works hard and how the vegetables will always reward them during harvest, and how each plant has its own unique personality as well. He even shows them a picture he took of oddly shaped eggplants that he grew as proof. How passionate he sounds causes Haruki to break character for a moment, and she ends up laughing at how passionate he is, even slapping him on the back. Realizing she let herself go, she recomposes herself and urges the boys to continue to their destination. A little while later, when Haruki is out of earshot, Kazuki admits he didn't expect Haruki to show her true self. Hayato feigns knowing nothing about it since he knows he isn't supposed to be close to Haruki. Kazuki decides to introduce himself, and the two shake hands. When Hayato returns to his classroom, the guys praise him for protecting Haruki from Kazuki. However, Kazuki enters his class and asks to see more pictures of plants. Hiyori decides to reveal that Hayato also had Shrine Girl photos, which Kazuki says he's interested in as well. Haruki feels a little bothered by the conversation, so she decides to excuse herself and heads to the garden where she strikes up a conversation with Minamo. She decides to take a good look at Minamo and notices how adorable she really is, which makes her wonder if Minamo is the reason Hayato wants to join the gardening club. For some reason, this bothers her, and her frustrations are clear even to Minamo. Haruki apologizes for her outburst and admits that she has a lot of things on her mind as of late. Minamo suddenly gives Haruki her hat and insists that she play in the dirt to feel better. Seeing how determined Minamo is, she decides to give her suggestion a try and helps Minamo with the gardening. After a while, Haruki does feel better and even asks if she can join in on the harvest. Minamo allows it and even feels relieved because Haruki is finally smiling. She shares that she's pretty new when it comes to gardening. Before all this, she was sad due to a circumstance and barely did anything. She found the experience strange, but then came across gardening because someone had told her about the growth process, which made her curious to experience it herself. She explains that gardening helped her get over a very tough time. Feeling that they can become good friends, Haruki promises to visit her in the garden more often. Meanwhile, during lunch, Himeko looks at her packed food in disappointment because it has tomatoes in it. She tells her friend Honoka that Hayato probably did this to get back at her because she complained about how horrid dinner looked one night. Honoka is surprised that Hayato is the one preparing Himeko's lunches. However, Himeko takes this as a sign to complain about Hayato, so she begins listing all housework he does without her permission. This only impresses Honoka, who thinks Hayato might be someone really amazing. The other girls agree and insist that Himeko introduce them to him someday. At first, she is hesitant until the girls mention wanting to invite them for karaoke. Since Himeko is curious about getting the experience, they decide they should go today, even without Hayato. After the karaoke session, Himeko walks home and decides to practice singing with Hayato and Haruki someday. However, Haruki spots her in town, and it seems like the girls Haruki is with are curious about her because they recognize her from photos on Haruki's phone. With all the questions being thrown at her, Himeko gets nervous, so Haruki has to remind everyone to take it easy. The girls apologize, and Himeko admits that she was just a little surprised. Haruki rubs her head and praises her, which embarrasses Himeko. Himeko then receives a text from Hayato and notices it is a shopping list. Since it seems like a lot, Haruki offers to carry half and tells the girls that she needs to leave them to help Himeko. When they leave, the girls gush about this new side of Haruki that they get to see. They also notice Himeko mentioning that she has a brother and wonder if he's the reason that Haruki has been softening up to everyone lately. Meanwhile, Haruki and Himeko have just finished shopping. Haruki reveals that she just happened to run into those girls, though even the way she acted around them felt a little mysterious to Himeko. She recalls that Haruki acted that way in the convenience store as well and learns that this is how Haruki tends to act in public. She smiles to herself since this means the real Haruki is their secret to keep. Himeko points out that she is glad she ran into Haruki today instead of her brother because Haruki does better when it comes to socializing. Suddenly, the two of them see a runaway dog and Haruki notices it's heading toward Minamo, so she immediately tackles the dog. However, the dog assumes she is playing and jumps on her. Out of panic, Himeko decides to call Hayato, though she has a hard time explaining the situation to him over the phone. After a while, Minamo helps Haruki with her ankle, while Himeko scolds Haruki for tackling an animal out of nowhere because Haruki's injury could have been worse. Minamo tries to calm her down, explaining that Haruki was only trying to save her. Himeko tells her that Haruki deserves to be scolded because she never listens. She then asks Minamo if she's okay and if she somehow knows the dog, but she also mistakes Minamo for being younger than her. It isn't until Haruki points out that Minamo is actually the same age as her that Himeko panics because she realizes she is being disrespectful. However, Minamo takes no offense and is even relieved to see this side of Haruki, mentioning that she seems much more approachable now than in school. When Himeko asks if they are friends, Minamo has a hard time answering her. So Haruki is the one who calls them gardening buddies. Minamo feels embarrassed but agrees with Haruki. Remembering the time, she decides she needs to take her leave and takes the dog with her since it's her neighbor's. Once she is gone, Hayato arrives and scolds both Haruki and Himeko. However, he does notice that Haruki is injured and offers her a piggyback ride. Himeko suddenly remembers that in the past, Haruki would often rely on Hayato. As they walk home together, Hayato comments that Haruki is heavier compared to when they were kids. This causes the three of them to bicker all the way home. One day, Haruki visits the garden and is worried about the tomatoes being sick, though Minamo tries to explain that they aren't. Hayato approaches them because he finds them a weird pair, and Minamo asks if the tomatoes look sick to him. He tells her that they just need a little more water due to it being summer, but otherwise the tomatoes are perfectly healthy, which makes Minamo relieved. Hayato questions Haruki over her sudden friendliness with Minamo, so she explains that she and Minamo are now garden buddies. Hayato points out that Haruki might get sunburned out in the garden, and this causes Haruki to suddenly pull up Hayato's shirt. Seeing that he is still pale, she begins touching around his torso, which embarrasses Minamo. Minamo gets so nervous that she runs away from the two of them. Hayato had intended to give her the club application sheet he filled out, so Haruki promises to explain things later. During lunch, Kazuki drops by Hayato's class to see if he would like to have lunch with him. This bothers Haruki, who decides that she needs to intervene and tells Kazuki that she actually has an appointment with Hayato. She begins dragging Hayato away, but Kazuki tells them that he'll wait in their classroom until they return. Haruki tries to get him to leave by explaining that they'll be working in the library storage room. Hearing it's a task, Kazuki tries to offer his aid, which makes Hayato panic. However, Haruki decides to ignore Kazuki and continue dragging Hayato toward the library. Since they are there, they decide to get some work done. Hayato decides to ask why Haruki is acting strange today. He notices that she's been breaking character more often, even in front of people. Haruki admits she's been considering just dropping it altogether since there doesn't seem to be a need for it. She tries to explain that she wants to change and experience new things. However, she's unable to continue because she gets shy, then becomes unbalanced from where she's sitting. Luckily, Hayato manages to break her fall. Despite how close they are, because Hayato is hurt, he asks if they can just stay in that position for a bit until he manages to calm down. After Haruki allows him, they suddenly hear a couple enter their section of the library with the intention of eating lunch together. Eventually, the couple begins kissing, and it's getting harder for Haruki to contain her reaction, so she ends up running out of the library. Later, after class, Hayato can tell that Haruki is still very jittery after what they witnessed in the library. Emma, a classmate of theirs, tells Hayato to leave Haruki to her and the rest of the girls. Soon they surround Haruki and begin bringing her outside for a little chat. Iori apologizes and admits that Emma is actually his girlfriend, and she is also his childhood friend. He begins describing how dating her made him realize a different side of Emma that he never knew about, even though they had known each other for so long. His voice sounds fond of her as he describes the new quirks about her he's discovered. Even Hayato can tell how smitten Iori is with her. Iori tells Hayato that he and Haruki should come and hang out with them sometimes, and Hayato agrees that it sounds like a good plan, but he wonders where they can bring Haruki. When he returns home, Haruki greets him while wearing a new apron she had bought. She explains that she just bought it because she recently wanted to do more and stop being a burden to him. She explains that it's more than just dinner. Hayato even carried her home the other day. Though Hayato mentions that none of those things really count as burdens to him, Haruki still insists on doing more around his apartment to help out. Hayato can tell that Haruki has already made up her mind, so he decides to allow it. Himeko finds them outside their apartment talking and invites Hayato inside so he can begin dinner already. Once the food is made, the trio sits down to eat, and Hayato decides to ask if Haruki has any plans for the weekend. She admits that she plans on spending time on her hobbies. This makes Hayato mention that he was hoping they could go somewhere together. This makes Haruki throw away all her weekend plans for the chance to hang out with him. When Hayato asks for any recommendations on where they can go, Haruki admits that she doesn't have any since she's an indoor person. Himeko tells them that they should try watching a movie. There isn't anything in particular she wants to see, but she wants to see how big the movie auditoriums are in the city. Hayato gets intrigued and decides that it's the perfect activity for them. Haruki begins to feel sad and asks if Himeko is really going with them, making Hayato admit that she was in the plan the entire time. Haruki has to hide her disappointment because she originally thought it was just going to be her and Hayato alone, but now Himeko is in the picture. One day, Hayato sniffs the air and notices that it smells like it'll rain later. He smiles as he thinks about how this weekend their group agreed to all go out to the movies together. It reminds him of how he and Haruki were when they were younger and how they would go out on adventures. Behind him, Kazuki approaches him and starts a conversation. Hayato isn't too happy about being in close proximity to Kazuki, but remains polite and answers his questions. They begin walking towards school, and many students greet Kazuki as they walk. This causes Hayato to stop and mention how Kazuki seems to look like an idol when he greets people. Kazuki stops to think about it, and Hayato notices that he's seen a similar look before. He then realizes what's going on and tells Kazuki that he's probably wearing a mask as well, and this causes Kazuki to freeze. Hayato returns to walking to school and vaguely thinks about how Kazuki reminds him of how Haruki tends to hide behind a mask in order to maintain her public image in school. However, since he doesn't care too much about Kazuki, he decides not to stick his nose into Kazuki's business, reasoning to himself that Kazuki can work around it himself. However, he notices that Kazuki is no longer walking, so he tries calling out to him. Snapping out of his daze, Kazuki runs back to him and calls Hayato a decent guy. He tells Hayato not to believe any of the rumors, specifically the ones about him being interested in Haruki, as he really does not see her as a potential romantic partner. Hayato panics and says that he isn't interested in Haruki either, though Kazuki admits he doesn't believe that nothing is going on between them because Haruki drops her mask whenever Hayato is around. Hayato has a hard time denying it because it seems Kazuki has already figured out that Haruki has been acting all along. However, before he can question Kazuki's knowledge about Haruki, Kazuki suddenly challenges him to a race and runs ahead. Hayato is surprised but races after him anyway. In the classroom, Hayato notices that Haruki seems to be in a happier mood than usual. He even teases her that her happiness seems like that of a grade schooler going on her first field trip. However, Haruki refuses to acknowledge that she seems that way. Haruki gets annoyed with him, but then notices Emma nearby. She decides to approach her and asks to speak with her about something. She also invites Tsurumi and Shiranami, Emma's friends, as well. Hayato looks at her fondly as she speaks to the girls, and Iori sits next to him and teases him about his girlfriend being stolen. Hayato denies that Haruki is his girlfriend, but Iori mentions he was talking about Emma since she's Iori's girlfriend. Iori tells Hayato that Emma had been bugging him because she had wanted to become closer friends with Haruki lately. He mentions how Haruki never lets anyone too close, but it looks like Haruki is getting more approachable, so Emma's been putting extra effort into getting close. He sincerely hopes that Emma will be able to befriend Haruki because he wants his girlfriend to be happy. His statement makes Hayato realize that everyone really does have their own problems. After class, Haruki excitedly pushes Emma out of the classroom because they're going shopping. Haruki gives Hayato a teasing smile, which makes him fondly think about how she's stirring up trouble again. He then gets a call from his dad. Hayato goes to the post office and picks up a package meant for Mayumi's rehab exercises. He makes his way to the hospital and can't help but think that the building looks an awful lot like a prison. When he enters a recreation room, he is surprised to see Mayumi with Minamo and Nadahisa. She seems to be busy fixing Minamo's hair, and at the end of it, she manages to make a crown braid out of her hair. When she is done, they finally notice Hayato there, and Nagisa recognizes him as the boy he thinks is interested in Minamo. When Hayato compliments Minamo, Nagisa is quick to assume this is Hayato's attempt to woo Minamo. So Hayato has to explain to him that he actually came to deliver something to Mayumi from his dad. He brings out a package and hands it to her, but she drops it the first time. She reaches down to pick it up and thanks Hayato for bringing it to her because she'll be using it in her rehab. She also asks Minamo to let her do her hair again the next time they meet. She admits she misses doing Himiko's hair because Himiko no longer lets her do it. She then notices that Minamo's hands are sore, but Minamo reassures her that it's only from working in the garden. Seeing that Minamo is getting uncomfortable, Hayato offers to take her home. He unconsciously grabs her hand and leaves the room, causing Nadahisa to panic at the sight. By the time they reach the elevator, he realizes he is still holding her hand, so he lets go and apologizes. He takes a moment to look at Minamo and realizes she looks a lot prettier now with her hair done. Minamo mentions that she was surprised to discover that it was Mayumi he had been visiting in the hospital. After she learned that Mayumi was his mother, she realized that was the reason why Hayato does all the housework. Hayato is about to shift the conversation, but she interrupts him by saying that he must be going through a difficult time. So she insists that she help him and that he only needs to ask her. They reach the exit of the building and Hayato tells her that he can't think of anything he needs help with, but promises to let Minamo know if he needs anything. Minamo's mood brightens and she mentions that she's very good at housework and would like a turn at helping him this time. She reasons that it can serve as a thank you for all the help he has given her with the garden. When Minamo smiles up at him, he doesn't understand why the memory of Himiko crying suddenly comes to his mind. He feels himself getting sick as the memory of how he found his mother collapse on the ground plays in his mind. Minamo begins to worry since he looks pale, but he insists that he is fine. As they head out together, they notice that it has started to rain, so Minamo pulls out a folding umbrella for them to share. During the walk home, Hayato decides to compliment her properly. He mentions that the hairstyle she is now makes her look cuter than usual. He doesn't notice that the more he compliments her, the redder she becomes. However, he does notice that she has grown silent. Suddenly, it becomes too much for her, and she runs the rest of the way home, leaving Hayato confused. When he returns home, he sees that Haruki seems happily engaged in helping Himeko with her assignments. For some reason, Haruki looks suspiciously happy and even greets him in a sickeningly sweet manner. She also offers to help out with dinner, which only makes Hayato worry about what is going on. He tries to figure out if something happened to Haruki while he was out, but according to Himeko, she's been acting that way since arriving home. Hayato tries to recall what happened at school and does remember that she was already acting suspicious during that time. The two siblings give Haruki a look, and a strange chill runs up both their spines at how carefree Haruki looks. During meal preparation, Hayato decides to ask if anything happened to her at school since she's acting strange. Haruki smiles because she knew Hayato would catch on, but decides it's best not to tell him anything because she wants him to keep guessing longer. However, Hayato teases her about how gross it is that she thinks she is acting so cute. During dinner, both Himeko and Haruki happily dig in, since it's the first time something that looks fried is served to them. However, Hayato notices that Haruki still has her prim and proper act up. He decides to ignore it for now and asks Himeko what movie she wants to see. Himeko admits she's considering Tale of Mayuta, since it's been getting a lot of media attention. Haruki becomes uneasy, especially since Mao is the lead actress of the film, so she tells Hayato that she would prefer to watch an anime movie that is also showing called Fate. Hayato decides that it might be the better option, since there isn't anything in particular he is interested in. However, Himeko is a little unsure about watching the anime since it's already the third installment and she hasn't watched the first two. Haruki is shocked that Himeko has never heard of the anime before and begins talking about it passionately. Eventually, she decides to show it to her and immediately heads over to play it on the television. She tells them that they can catch up because the anime's first two installments are available for streaming. She talks about how much of a masterpiece the entire series is. Himeko is a little overwhelmed by how passionately Haruki speaks about it, so she encourages Haruki to return to the dinner table to eat. However, Haruki doesn't waste a moment and continues talking about how good the anime is. She then tells Himeko that she should try the original game. Even if it's headed in a more mature direction, she guarantees Himeko that she will have a grand time and fall in love with the entire franchise. While she is explaining the game, Himeko and Hayato's father arrives home. To cover up what she was talking about, she switches back to her polite personality and greets him. The group returns to eating dinner, now with Hayato's father joining them at the table. He comments that Haruki looks like she has changed a lot since they last saw each other. Haruki answers politely, even speaking highly of Himeko and Hayato, which actually gets on Hayato's nerves. So he decides to pinch her cheeks and calls her out for putting on an act in front of someone familiar. Himeko worries because Hayato is not treating Haruki like a lady in front of their father, but Haruki gets annoyed as well and begins pinching Hayato's cheeks in retaliation. Hayato's father looks at the pair in disbelief before breaking into soft laughter, which causes them to stop. He apologizes for finding the situation amusing, but admits that he is very relieved that Hayato and Haruki remain good friends even after being apart for all these years. Hayato offers to fetch his father's dinner while Himeko feels like she's about ready to head to her room. Both siblings leave Haruki and Mr. Kirishima by the dining table. Haruki feels uneasy but is aware that Hayato's father knows about her family's situation. She is surprised when Hayato's father suddenly thanks her for making Hayato happy. Hayato returns to the table and serves his father a meal. His father also mentions that he is grateful Hayato delivered his mother's package to the hospital. Hayato's father notices that Haruki looks surprised and realizes that Hayato has not told Haruki that Mayumi is in the hospital. Instead of being upset, he feels relieved that Hayato considers Haruki special to him. He knows the reason Hayato hasn't said anything is because he did not want Haruki to worry about him. Hayato gets worried that his father might expose him even more, so he offers to take Haruki home now. Though confused, Haruki agrees to go with him, but before they leave the door, Hayato's father offers to have a spare key prepared for Haruki. This only causes Hayato to rush the two of them outside. During the walk to Haruki's place, Haruki notices that Hayato hasn't asked her why his father didn't seem surprised about her being a girl. He sort of had a feeling his father knew about Haruki's situation, since Haruki never attended school. The two of them continue their walk and think about their relationship. They were best friends and had spent at least 7 years apart. In those 7 years, a lot of things had changed about them, and both feel a bit regretful for missing each other's milestones. Hayato finally admits that he really didn't think her family history mattered to their friendship, and all that mattered to him was that Haruki and he could remain friends. Haruki gives him a relieved laugh, though Hayato thinks she's making fun of him. To ease his worries, she takes hold of his hand and admits that to her, Hayato is also very important. They decide to continue the rest of the way home hand in hand shyly. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next.